You could really be a supporter of racist genocide, massive land robbing, and institutional torture if you're fond of celebrating Christopher Columbus. In fact, Columbus Day stirs up a storm of controversy every year. So, was he a gifted navigator or a reckless adventurer? Just think about it. Hello friends! Well, if you often fantasize about the past and really want to know about the history of ancient civilizations, then you're at the right place. Welcome to Unthinkable Past, a channel better known for dishing up the outlandish ancient traditions of all times. Today we're going to visit the ancient Americas to check out the despicable acts Christopher Columbus has committed there. So better buckle up and let's binge history together. It's a bit of an old hat at this point to mention that Christopher Columbus, in whose name children are off school and mail isn't being delivered, was a homicidal tyrant who initiated the two greatest atrocities in the history of the Western Hemisphere, the transatlantic slave trade and the American Indian Genocide. But hold on, rehashing all of his misdeeds would require a much longer debate, not least since evaluating the claims of contemporary primary sources is a somewhat historiographical enterprise. Well, not only is Christopher Columbus a prominent member of the great historical pantheon, but he's also the only one to get a holiday named for him. Yeah, the one date from history class that everyone remembers is 1492. Textbooks portray Columbus as the legendary explorer who discovered America and are often given 1,000 words on average, a map, a portrait, and an illustration. Still, the documented history has to paint a much more complicated picture. As a matter of fact, Columbus had never discovered America, yet his voyage was no less courageous. Even if you were to overlook the not-so-minor fact that millions of people were already living there for nearly 14,000 years, the truth remains that Columbus had never set foot on the shores. While he did reach the coasts of what today are Cuba, Haiti, and the Dominican Republic in the inept belief that he had discovered a shortcut to India, but he was thousands of miles off course. Soon after his absurd Gilligan Island-style invasion, and in order to secure additional royal funding from Spanish King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, he returned to them with exciting but fake news that he had discovered a quick route to Asia. Consequently, the capitulations of Santa Fe, his lucrative treaty with the Spanish monarchs, made Columbus the admiral, viceroy, and governor of whatever land he discovered. It further stated that Columbus was allowed to keep 10% of whatever merchandise, whether pearls, precious stones, gold, silver, spices, and other goods he acquired within the new region. He also received funds accordingly to lead 3 more voyages to the so-called Americas, occurring in 1493, 1498, and 1502. A point to ponder here, Columbus may have come west with noble aspirations, but his pact with Spain reveals his underlying motives were anything but altruistic. However, like many other European explorers, Columbus encountered indigenous people throughout his voyages, and there are some major sources of contention involving his interactions with the natives he labeled Indians. While subjugation and massacre were just 2 of the atrocities committed by Columbus against the Indians when he initially arrived, he mistreated them as well as his own employees, so much so that his own brother staged a rebellion against him. For further lucidity, let's now get to some historically documented facts that suggest Columbus is one of the worst, if not the worst, monsters in global history. Columbus bluntly disobeyed the king and queen's instructions to abstain from causing the inhabitants any harm. For instance, he'd forced the Indians to collect gold for him or else die. Yeah, you heard it right. In 1495, he established the tribute system, which required everyone above 14 to provide him with a hawksbill of gold every 3 months. Those who complied were awarded a token to wear around their neck, and those who would not were punished by having their hands cut off and left to bleed to death. Around 10,000 in Haiti and the Dominican Republic were victimized this way. The brutality went on to such an extent that many of the indigenous people were literally burnt alive by literally grilling on spits. According to Bartolomé de las Casas, a Spanish historian plus a Catholic priest who observed much of the carnage, Columbus had commanded his troops to just chop off the legs of children who ran from them in order to test the sharpness of their blades. Oof! His gang would occasionally dump people into boiling soap and cause others to be eaten alive by hunting dogs. Moreover, Arawak toddlers were slaughtered for dog food if Columbus's brigade ran short of meat for their vicious dogs. Just horrifying. To your surprise, about 50,000 Indians committed mass suicide rather than complying with the Colombian rule. The Indians destroyed their bread supply so that Neither they nor the invaders could eat it. They threw themselves over cliffs, poisoned themselves with roots, and starved themselves to death. Oppressed by the impossible requirement to deliver tributes of gold, the Indians were no longer able to tend their fields or care for their sick, children, and elderly. They had given up and committed mass suicide to avoid being killed or captured by Columbus and his troops, and to avoid sharing their land with them, their fields, groves, beaches, forests, and women, the foreseeable future of their people. Sexual molestation was another common practice during Colombian rule. He used to gather as many Caribbean girls as possible and gift the most beautiful among them to his favorite and obedient lieutenants for their sexual pleasure. The rest of them were often left to the mercy of other crew members. Settlers under Columbus used to sell 9 and 10-year-old girls into sexual slavery. This one he admitted himself in the letter to Doña Juana de la Torre, a friend of the Spanish queen. There are plenty of dollars to go about looking for girls. Those from 9 to 10 are now in demand, and for all ages, a good price must be paid. Columbus not only conceived a new type of mass slaughter, but also a new type of slavery, which he developed into a race-based and generational form of brutal labor. He, along with his troops, enslaved thousands of natives and often used to ruthlessly punish them for minor infractions. Indian slaves were even beheaded when their Spanish captors couldn't be bothered to untie them. Dr. Lowen claims that Columbus not only started the transatlantic slave trade, but he probably sent more slaves than anyone else, somewhere around 5,000 in every round. Columbus's evil was so effective that there were 8 million Taino people when he arrived in Haiti, the Dominican Republic, and other Caribbean islands in 1493. The number drastically fell to 3 million in just 3 years after the horrifying bloodshed, mass suicide, and excessive subjugation carried out by the colonists. Only about 100,000 people remained alive when he left in 1504. Nonetheless, Christopher Columbus had to reap as he'd sowed. The Spanish monarchy got wind of the mistreatment of Spanish colonists in the Americas, including the flogging and executions without trial. Based on the testimony of 23 eyewitnesses, Governor Francisco de Bobadilla arrested Columbus for inhumane and widespread crimes against the Taino, Arawak, plus Lucayan people and shipped him back to Spain in shackles. The evidence was substantial to such an extent that he confessed and was convicted, was also stripped off his title as governor. Well, historians have used the term Columbian exchange to characterize the exchange of plants, animals, and goods that his expedition spurred between the East and West. Though the effects were extensive and cannot be dismissed entirely as negative, critics have asserted that the worst aspects of this exchange had even constituted biological warfare, better explained as an introduction of a slew of new diseases that would have dramatic long-term effects on Native Americans. However, it's undeniable that Columbus brought slavery, torture, and sexual molestation to every portion of the New World he touched. Even his own words, as well as the words of modern onlookers, provide compelling evidence of his depredations. So those who seek to revere and commemorate Columbus as an adventurous explorer must confront his extensive, well-documented, and gruesome dark side. Italian Americans and all others can easily find much more worthy historical figures to put on pedestals. Well, there you have it. We hope you liked this video. If you did, hit the like button and subscribe to this channel without any delays. Make sure to turn on the post notifications and also let us know in the comment section about your views on these despicable practices carried out by Christopher Columbus in the Americas. Thanks for watching Unthinkable Past. Until the next time we meet, continue learning and stay healthy. Ciao!